30 minutes before my surgery. I was waiting in that cold hospital hallway. My heart was pounding like an out-of-control drum. The white walls seemed to be closing in on me, and the smell of disinfectant was turning my stomach. I was wearing that horrible hospital gown that makes you feel vulnerable, exposed, like you don't even own your own dignity anymore. At 72 years old, I never thought I'd be there, waiting for them to open up my chest for heart surgery, praying to God that everything would be okay. My name is Antonia, and my whole life I've been a strong, independent woman. After my husband Robert died 10 years ago, I built a real estate empire worth over $2 million. Properties in the city center, luxury apartments, land that appreciates every year. I did it all for my only daughter, Emily, and for my grandchildren. I wanted to leave them a secure future, an inheritance that would give them peace of mind for their whole lives. That morning, Emily had arrived early at the hospital. I saw her appear down the hallway in her elegant red dress, high heels clicking on the floor, and that smile that always calmed me down. My daughter, my treasure, the person I trusted most in this world. Daniel, my son-in-law, arrived a little later, dressed in his impeccable gray suit, tie perfectly knotted. That successful man attitude I had always found so admirable. For 5 years, he had been like the son I never had. "Mom, everything is going to be perfect," Emily had told me. She stroked my hand with those soft fingers I remembered from when she was a little girl. "Dr. Evans is the best cardiologist in the city. In a few hours, you'll be good as new, running around like always." Daniel nodded beside her, with that confident look that gave me so much peace. "Antonia, you are a very strong woman. This surgery is nothing for someone like you." I felt so blessed to have a family like that. Emily had been with me at every doctor's appointment for the last few months, organizing everything, asking the doctor about every detail of the procedure. Daniel had taken care of talking to the insurance company, coordinating the payments, making sure I had the best private room in the hospital. They seemed like a perfect couple, united, genuinely concerned about my well-being. The room I was in was spacious, with large windows that let in the golden morning light. There were fresh flowers on the nightstand that Daniel had brought that morning, white lilies that scented the air and reminded me of my garden at home. On the wall hung a painting of a mountain landscape that gave me a strange sense of peace, like it was a window to a better, quieter world. I remember staring at that painting while I waited, thinking about all the beautiful moments I had lived, my wedding to Robert, the birth of Emily, her first steps, her graduation. The day she met Daniel and told me she had found the love of her life. All those memories seemed to form a perfect movie of family happiness. Daniel had always been attentive to me. Every Sunday he came to my house for lunch. He helped me with the property documents. He explained investments with that patience few young men have for older women. "Antonia," he would say with that charming smile, "you are so smart about business. You should teach me more of your tricks." And I, like a fool, I felt flattered, proud to have such a respectful son-in-law. But then, everything changed in an instant that would mark my life forever. I was lying on that rigid gurney, pretending to sleep because my nerves had me exhausted, when I heard them talking in the hallway. At first, their voices sounded distant, but they got closer until they were right outside the slightly open door of my room. Daniel's voice came through clear, conspiratorial, loaded with an emotion I had never heard in him before. "Emily, in 3 hours, it will all be over. You have the documents ready." His tone was cold, calculating, completely different from the caring man I knew. My heart sped up, and not because of the surgery I was waiting for. "Yes, my love," my daughter replied, with a voice that chilled my blood. "The fake will is perfect. As soon as she doesn't wake up from the anesthesia, or ends up in a vegetative state, we can proceed. The doctors already said that at her age, with her heart condition, complications are very likely." I was completely paralyzed. A fake will, a vegetative state. What were they talking about? My own children, the people I trusted most, were standing right there. discussing my death as if it were a business transaction. "Perfect," Daniel continued. I could hear him rubbing his hands together with satisfaction. "I already spoke with the corrupt notary. As soon as we have the death certificate or the declaration of mental incapacity, we can transfer the properties. The downtown apartments are worth $1,200,000, the land another $600,000, and the main house another $200,000, almost $2 million. Emily, we'll be rich." "And the best part," my daughter added with a laugh that cut me like a knife, "is that no one will suspect a thing. Everyone will think it was a natural complication from the surgery, an accidental death, or in the worst case, she'll be left as a vegetable and we can manage her assets with power of attorney." My own mother, reduced to a signature on a document. In that moment, I felt like the world was collapsing on top of me. The room started to spin, the white walls became blurry, and a terrible nausea rose in my throat. How was it possible that my own daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, was planning my death? How was it possible that this man I considered a son was calculating the value of my life in dollars? My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I had to bite my lips to keep from screaming. Every word that came out of their mouths was like a stab straight to the heart. My own blood, my own daughter, was standing right there, calculating how much money she would get from my death. It was so surreal, so impossible to process, that for a moment I thought maybe I was hallucinating from the pre-op medications. "And if something goes wrong with the plan?" I heard Emily ask. Her voice sounded nervous, as if she was finally considering the consequences of what they were plotting. "What if she survives the surgery without complications? What if she wakes up perfectly fine?" Daniel let out a sinister laugh I will never forget. "Don't worry, my love. I already took care of that too. I spoke with Mike, the night shift nurse. I paid him $5,000 to accidentally give her an extra dose of morphine during recovery. It will be impossible to detect in the autopsy. It will look like a normal post-operative complication." I felt the blood freeze in my veins. Mike. The nurse who had always seemed so gentle, so professional. He was also involved in this diabolical conspiracy. My world was falling apart piece by piece, and I could do nothing but lie there, pretending to be asleep, while I listened to the details of my own murder. "Perfect," Emily replied. The relief in her voice made me sick to my stomach. "So it doesn't matter what happens in the surgery. One way or another, tonight, Mom won't be with us anymore, and tomorrow morning we'll be millionaires." "Exactly. And think about it, Emily. We won't have to pretend to care anymore. We won't have to come every Sunday to listen to her repetitive stories about the past. We won't have to put up with her advice on how to manage our marriage. We'll finally be free and rich." Every word was a hammer blow to my soul. Repetitive stories, annoying advice. For all these years, I had believed they enjoyed my company, that they valued our family relationship. I had tried so hard to be a good mother, a good mother-in-law, a good grandmother. I had given them everything I had, not just materially, but emotionally, and it turns out it had all been a lie, a perfect performance to keep me trusting them until the moment they could execute their macabre plan. "The only thing that bothers me a little," Emily continued in a thoughtful tone, "is that the kids are going to ask for their grandmother. What are we going to tell them? We'll tell them that Grandma was very old, that her heart couldn't take it anymore, and now she's in heaven watching over them. Kids forget quickly, Emily. In a few months they won't even remember her, and when they grow up, they'll only remember that their grandmother left them an inheritance that allowed them to have a comfortable life. My grandchildren, my little treasures, Matthew and Sophia, 5 and 7 years old. I thought of their angelic little faces, how they ran to me every Sunday yelling, 'Grandma Antonia,' with that pure joy only children can feel. I remembered the afternoons we spent playing in the garden, the stories I told them before bed, the cookies we baked together. Was all that going to disappear? Were they going to grow up thinking their grandmother just Went away? Without knowing their own parents had planned her death. Besides, Daniel added with a coldness that chilled me, with $2 million, we can move to Miami, start a new life, far away from this place. The kids will adapt quickly. They can go to the best private schools. We'll have a house on the beach, a completely different lifestyle. I love that idea, Emily replied with genuine enthusiasm. I've always dreamed of living near the sea, and with that money, we could travel through Europe, buy designer clothes, eat at the best restaurants. It would be the perfect life. The perfect life, built on my corpse. The perfect life, financed with the blood of the woman who had given them everything. It was so grotesque, so inhuman. I couldn't believe I was hearing these words from my own daughter's mouth, the little girl I had carried in my arms, whom I had fed, whom I had comforted when she had nightmares, whom I had applauded at every school play, whom I had supported in every important decision of her life. And the funeral? Daniel asked with chilling pragmatism. Something elegant. Or do we keep it simple? Something elegant, but not too expensive. Emily replied immediately. We have to look grieving, but we don't want to spend a lot of the inheritance on the funeral. A decent casket, pretty flowers, and an emotional ceremony where we can cry convincingly in front of everyone. Cry convincingly. Those words were burned into my mind like a hot iron. My own daughter was already rehearsing how to fake grief over my death, how to play the part of the grieving daughter so no one would suspect the truth. It was such an elaborate, cold performance that I realized they had probably been planning this for months, maybe years. Perfect. And after the funeral, we wait a week or two to process the legal documents. We don't want to look desperate. We have to keep up appearances. Daniel concluded. At that moment, I heard footsteps approaching down the hall. It was Nurse Mary, an older woman, about 50, who had been especially kind to me since I arrived. Her steps echoed firmly. I could hear her white shoes approaching my room. Mrs. Antonia, Mary said in a soft voice. In 15 minutes, we have to take you to the operating room. How are you feeling? Emily and Daniel hurried into the room, and suddenly their faces transformed completely. The perfect masks of family concern slid over their features as if they were professional actors. Emily approached my gurney with tears in her eyes, tears I now knew were completely fake. Oh, Mom, you're awake. Did you hear anything? We were just talking in the hallway about how nervous we are, she said, with such a convincing performance that, if I hadn't heard the previous conversation, I would have believed every word. No, honey. I was asleep, I murmured, trying to control my voice so it wouldn't tremble. I just heard the nurse arrive. Daniel stood on the other side of the gurney and took my other hand. His fingers felt cold, like a reptile's, but his smile was warm and reassuring. Antonia, we want you to know that we'll be right here waiting for you when you get out of surgery. Don't worry about anything. We'll take care of everything while you recover. Yes, they would take care of everything. They would take care of my death, my funeral, dividing my inheritance, moving to Miami with my blood-stained money. The irony was so cruel, I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Mary began to prepare the gurney to move me to the OR, checking the medical charts, adjusting the blankets, verifying my ID, the whole normal protocol before a surgery that could be my last. But instead of being a medical procedure to save my life, it had become the perfect opportunity for my own family to murder me. Are you ready, Mrs. Antonia? Mary asked with that reassuring professionalism that marked the best nurses. Yes, I replied, although inside I was screaming no, that I wasn't ready to die, that I didn't want my life to end in such a treacherous way. But I had a plan forming in my mind, a desperate idea that maybe, just maybe, could save my life. As Mary pushed my gurney down the hallways toward the operating room, my mind was working at lightning speed. Every second that passed was crucial. Every moment could be the difference between life and death. I knew I had to act fast, but I also had to be smart. If Emily and Daniel suspected I had heard their conversation, they would speed up their plans or find another way to eliminate me. "Mary," I whispered, when we were far enough away from Emily and Daniel. "I need to ask you a very important favor. It's an emergency." The nurse leaned toward me with genuine concern in her eyes. "What's wrong? Mrs. Antonia? Are you feeling sick? Do I need to call the doctor?" "No, it's not that. I need you to help me make a phone call before I go into the OR. It's urgent, a matter of life and death." My voice was trembling, but I tried to sound as convincing as possible. Mary frowned, clearly confused. "Ma'am, we're very close to the OR. Dr. Evans is waiting for you." "We can't delay the surgery." "Please," I begged, grabbing her hand with the little strength I had. "I just need 2 minutes. There's something I have to fix urgently, something that can't wait. I promise. After that, we can proceed with the operation." Something in my tone must have convinced her, because Mary stopped the gurney and looked me straight in the eyes. "Is this about your legal documents, your will?" "Exactly," I replied quickly. "There's a problem with my will that I just remembered. If something happens to me during the surgery, my family could have serious legal problems. I just need to make one quick call to my lawyer." Mary seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation. "All right, but it has to be very fast. I'll take you to a private room near the OR. You can make your call there while I tell the doctor we need 5 more minutes." My heart sped up, but this time with hope instead of terror. Mary took me to a small room that looked like a medical office, with a desk, a few chairs, and most importantly, a telephone. She helped me sit in a chair and handed me the receiver. "Thank you, Mary. You don't know what this means to me," I said, with real tears running down my cheeks. With trembling hands, I dialed the number for Ryan, my trusted lawyer for the last 15 years. Ryan had handled all my legal affairs since my husband's death. He had structured my investments, he had drafted my real will, and, most importantly, he was one of the few people in the world I trusted completely. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Please, Ryan, pick up." I prayed mentally. On the 4th ring, I heard his familiar voice. "Ryan Morales' office. This is Ryan speaking." "Ryan, it's Antonia. I'm at St. Joseph's Hospital. I'm about to go into surgery, and I need your help urgently. It's a life or death emergency." His tone changed immediately when he heard the urgency in my voice. "Antonia, what's going on? Are you okay?" "No, Ryan, I'm not okay. I just discovered something terrible. Emily and Daniel are planning to kill me during or after the surgery to get my inheritance. They have a fake will, and they've bribed the hospital staff." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. "Antonia, are you sure about what you're saying? Those are very serious accusations." "Completely sure. Ryan, I heard them talking. They have everything planned. A nurse named Mike is going to give me extra morphine during recovery to kill me. They have a corrupt notary ready to process a fake will. They're already planning to move to Miami with my money." "My God," Ryan murmured. "Where are you right now?" "In a room near the OR. I have maybe 2 minutes before the nurse comes to get me." "Ryan, I need you to get me out of here immediately. I can't go into that surgery. It's a trap. I understand. Listen to me carefully, Antonia. Can you walk? Can you move on your own?" "Yes, I'm weak, but I can walk. The problem is I'm in a hospital gown and I don't have my clothes or my ID." "Don't worry about that. I'm sending my assistant Sarah immediately to the hospital with clothes and everything you need. In the meantime, you have to get out of that OR. Make up any excuse. But do not let them operate on you today. What if they suspect something? What if they realize I heard them? Stay calm and act normally. Tell them you feel very nervous, that you want to postpone the surgery for a few days. It's normal for patients to get scared before a major operation. In the meantime, I'm going to contact the authorities and we're going to expose this whole plan." I heard footsteps approaching. "Ryan, someone's coming. What do I do?" "Calm down. I'm hanging up now. But I want you to know that in 30 minutes, Sarah will be there with an escape plan. In the meantime, buy as much time as you can. And Antonia, if you feel you're in immediate danger, scream, make a scene, get the whole hospital's attention. It's better they think you're crazy than for them to end up killing you. Thank you, Ryan. You're my only hope. I hung up the phone just as Mary appeared in the doorway. Mrs. Antonia, are you finished with your call? Dr. Evans is waiting for you in the OR. Mary, I said, trying to sound as convincing as possible. After talking with my lawyer, I realized there are some legal problems I have to resolve before the surgery. Would it be possible to postpone it until tomorrow? The nurse looked at me in surprise. Ma'am? That's very unusual. The doctor is already prepped, the surgical team is ready, and your family is waiting outside. Are you sure you want to cancel? Not cancel, just postpone for one day. My lawyer told me that if anything happens to me during the operation, there are some documents that could cause legal problems for my family. I'd rather fix that first to have peace of mind. Mary seemed to understand my concern. Well, I'll have to talk to Dr. Evans and the surgical coordinator. This is going to cause some inconvenience, but if it's really important to you, it's very important, Mary. Thank you so much. As Mary left to talk to the medical team, I sat in that chair. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest. I had bought a few precious minutes, but I knew the hardest part was yet to come. I had to face Emily and Daniel. I had to act like I didn't know anything, and I had to find a way out of the hospital without raising suspicion. A few minutes later, Mary returned with Dr. Evans, a man of about 60 with a gray beard and a serious expression. Mrs. Antonia, the doctor said, Mary told me you want to postpone the surgery. I must tell you, this is highly unusual. We have prepared everything to operate today, and your heart condition doesn't allow for much delay. Doctor, I understand perfectly, and I apologize for the inconvenience, but I just realized there are some urgent legal matters I must resolve. It would only be one day. Would it be possible to schedule it for tomorrow? The doctor studied me carefully. Are you feeling well physically? There's no medical issue worrying you. No, doctor. Physically, I feel the same as this morning. It's just, I need to have peace of mind before going into the OR. All right, Dr. Evans sighed. We will reschedule the surgery for tomorrow at the same time, but I want you to know, we cannot do this frequently. Your heart needs this intervention urgently. I understand, doctor. Tomorrow I'll be ready, I promise you. But inside, I knew I wouldn't be there tomorrow, in 24 hours. If everything went according to Ryan's plan, I would be far away from this hospital, far from the death trap my own family had set for me. Dr. Evans left the room to inform the surgical team about the change of plans, and Mary helped me back to my original room. With every step we took down that white hallway, I felt like I was walking a tightrope over a chasm. Any false move, any suspicious gesture, could alert Emily and Daniel that something had changed. When we arrived at my room, I found my daughter and son-in-law exactly where I had left them. Emily was sitting in the chair by the window, checking her cell phone. While Daniel paced back and forth with that nervous impatience I now understood perfectly. It wasn't worry for my well-being. It was anxiety to execute their macabre plan. "What happened, Mom?" Emily asked immediately when she saw me return on the gurney. "Why didn't they take you to the OR?" "I decided to postpone the surgery until tomorrow," I replied, trying to keep my voice as normal as possible. I got very nervous and felt I needed one more day to prepare myself mentally. Daniel approached the gurney with an expression that tried to be understanding, but I could see the frustration shining in his eyes. "Antonia, are you sure about that decision? The doctor said it was important to do the surgery as soon as possible." "Yes, I'm sure. It's just one day. Tomorrow I'll feel calmer." Every word I spoke was a superhuman effort to maintain my composure. Emily exchanged a quick glance with Daniel, a look loaded with meaning that I would have missed before, but now I could interpret perfectly. It was frustration. It was worry about their plans being delayed. It was the silent communication of two accomplices whose timeline had just been upset. "Well, Mom, if that's your decision, "We respect it," Emily said, getting up to approach me. "The important thing is that you feel comfortable and calm." But there was something different in her attitude. Her movements were more tense, her smile more forced. It was as if she had detected that something wasn't quite right, even if she couldn't pinpoint what. "You know what, Mom," Emily continued, "maybe it's best if you're alone for a while to rest. Daniel and I will go grab some lunch and come back this afternoon to keep you company." "No, honey, you don't have to go. I like having company," I replied quickly, because the last thing I wanted was to be left alone in that room where Mike, the corrupt nurse, could come to visit me. "We insist, Antonia," Daniel said with that firm kindness he used when he wanted things done his way. "You need to rest, and we also need to get some fresh air. It's been a very tense few hours for everyone." I had no choice but to accept. "All right, but don't be long. I don't like being alone in the hospital." "We'll be back in 2 hours, max," Emily promised, kissing my forehead with those lips that now seemed poisonous to me. "Rest, Mom. Tomorrow will be a very important day." Yes, I thought, tomorrow will be very important, but not in the way they imagine. After they left, I lay in bed, counting every second that passed. 20 minutes had gone by since my call with Ryan, which meant Sarah should arrive in 10 more minutes. But 10 minutes can feel like an eternity when your life is in danger. I tried to stay calm by remembering all the years Ryan had worked for me. He had handled the sale of my first properties when my husband died. He had structured the investments that made me rich. He had drafted contracts. He had resolved legal disputes. If anyone could get me out of this nightmare, it was him. Exactly 30 minutes after my phone call, a young woman appeared at the door of my room. It was Sarah, Ryan's assistant, a woman of about 25 with brown hair and a ponytail, dressed in a gray business suit. She was carrying a small suitcase and an expression of determination that filled me with hope. "Mrs. Dainay," she said in a low voice, "hooray," approaching my bed. "I'm Sarah. I work with Ryan Morales. He sent me to help you." "Thank God," I whispered, feeling enormous relief. "Did you bring what I need?" "It's all here," Sarah replied, opening the suitcase. "Comfortable clothes, shoes, identification, cash, and the keys to a car that's waiting for you in the hospital parking lot." Sarah took out a simple set of clothes: jeans, a white blouse, a light jacket, and sneakers, all in my exact size. Ryan had thought of every detail. "What's the plan?" I asked, as I slowly sat up in bed. "Mr. Morales is currently filing a formal complaint with the district attorney's office. He has the recording of your phone call as initial evidence and has already requested a full investigation into your daughter, your son-in-law, and Nurse Mike. In the meantime, we have to get you out of here immediately. And how are we going to do that without anyone seeing us?" Sarah smiled with a confidence that calmed me. "I already took care of that. I spoke with the hospital administration and told them you requested a transfer to a private clinic for a second opinion. It's completely legal and normal in cases of complex heart surgeries." "Brilliant," I murmured, impressed by the efficiency of Ryan and his team. "You need to get dressed quickly, Mrs. Dainay. In 5 minutes, an official orderly will come to get you for the transfer. Your daughter and son-in-law won't be back for an hour, according to my calculations, so we have plenty of time." I got out of bed with trembling legs, but with iron determination. It was the first time in hours I felt like I had control over my own life. Sarah helped me take off the hospital gown and put on the clothes she had brought. The jeans fit perfectly. The blouse was soft and comfortable, and the sneakers gave me a sense of stability I hadn't felt all morning. "Do I look presentable?" I asked, looking at myself in the small mirror in the room. "Perfect. You look like a normal woman leaving the hospital after a routine consultation. No one will suspect a thing." Sarah packed my hospital gown into the suitcase and checked that there was no evidence left of what had just happened. Then, she handed me a folder with documents. "These are the medical transfer papers. If anyone asks, You are going to St. Raphael's Clinic for a specialized cardiology consultation. Dr. Herrera is waiting for you there. Is there really a Dr. Herrera waiting for me? Of course. Mr. Morales took care of everything. You are actually going to have a full medical consultation to document your current state of health. That will be important for the legal investigation. At that moment, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Sarah and I tensed up, but it was exactly who we were expecting. A uniformed orderly with a wheelchair. "Mrs. Antonia Dinaeus," the man asked, an older man of about 50 with a professional expression. "I'm here to transfer you to St. Raphael's Clinic." "Yes, that's me," I replied, feeling my heart speed up again, but this time with excitement instead of terror. Sarah helped me sit in the wheelchair and put the suitcase on my lap. "Remember, Mrs. Dinaeus, stay calm. Everything is under control." As the orderly pushed my chair down the hospital hallways, I felt like I was escaping from a prison. Every foot we moved took me further from the death trap my own family had set. We passed the reception desk, the waiting room, the doctor's offices, and finally reached the main entrance. The afternoon sun hit my face like a divine caress. Just a few hours ago, I had entered this hospital believing I was going to a life-saving surgery. Now I knew I had been about to voluntarily walk into my own execution. "The car is over there," Sarah said, pointing to a silver sedan parked near the entrance. "The keys are in my purse. Can you walk there?" "Of course," I replied, getting up from the wheelchair with an energy I hadn't felt in weeks. "Sarah, I don't know how to thank you for all this." "Don't thank me, Mrs. Dinaeus. Thank Mr. Morales when you see him. He moved heaven and earth to organize all this in 30 minutes. We walked to the car, and Sarah helped me into the passenger seat. When she closed the door and sat at the wheel, I could finally exhale completely for the first time since I heard that terrible conversation. "Where are we going now?" I asked, as Sarah started the engine. "First, to St. Raphael's Clinic for your medical consultation. Then, to a safe place where you can rest while Mr. Morales handles the legal situation. Your daughter and son-in-law are going to get a big surprise when they return to the hospital." As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the hospital building growing smaller in the distance. It was the place where I had almost died, but it was also the place where my resurrection had begun. As Sarah drove through the city streets, I couldn't stop checking the rearview mirrors, expecting to see Daniel's car appear at any moment. My hands were shaking slightly, but it wasn't just from fear anymore. It was a strange mix of adrenaline and hope I hadn't felt in years. "Mrs. Dinaeus," Sarah said, noticing my nervousness, "you can relax. Right now, your daughter and son-in-law are having a quiet lunch, believing you are resting in your hospital room. They won't realize anything until an hour from now, when they return and find you're gone. And what will happen when they find out? Won't they try to find me? Of course they will. But by then, you'll be in a completely safe place, surrounded by witnesses, and with medical documentation proving you are perfectly lucid and in control of your mental faculties. They won't be able to do anything." St. Raphael's Clinic was located in an elegant part of the city, surrounded by well-kept gardens and with modern architecture that inspired confidence. It was completely different from the hospital I had been in, smaller, more personal, more welcoming. Dr. Herrera turned out to be a man of about 60, with gray hair and a genuine smile that immediately put me at ease. His office was decorated with medical diplomas, family photographs, and plants that gave it a homey feel. "Mrs. Dinaeus," he said, after giving me a complete medical exam, "according to all the tests we just ran, you are in excellent physical and mental condition for a woman your age. Your blood pressure is stable, your heart rate is normal, and mentally you are completely alert and oriented." "Does that mean I don't need the surgery urgently?" I asked, hopefully. "Well, you do have a heart condition that will eventually require surgical intervention, but it's not an immediate emergency. We could wait a few weeks, even months, to schedule it properly. It was definitely not necessary to operate on you today." Those words were like music to my ears. Emily and Daniel had chosen that specific day not because it was medically urgent, but because it was convenient for their criminal plans. "Doctor," I continued, "I need to ask you something very important. If I had been operated on today, and during recovery, they had given me an extra dose of morphine, what would have happened?" Dr. Herrera frowned gravely. "A morphine overdose in a post-operative patient could cause severe respiratory depression, coma, and even death. Why do you ask that, Mrs. Danes?" "Because I believe someone was planning to do exactly that." The doctor became visibly serious. "That is a very grave accusation. If you have suspicions that someone wanted to harm you deliberately, you must report it to the authorities immediately." "We're already doing that, doctor. My lawyer is handling the situation." After completing all the medical exams and getting copies of all the results, Sarah and I headed to what would be my temporary refuge, a suite in a luxury hotel in the city center. Ryan had thought of everything. It was a place where I would be safe, comfortable, and surrounded by witnesses 24 hours a day. The suite was spacious and elegant, with a spectacular view of the city. It had a living room, a large bedroom, a luxurious bathroom, and most importantly for my situation, 24-hour phone service and private security in the building. "Mr. Morales will arrive in an hour," Sarah informed me, as she organized my few belongings. "In the meantime, you can rest, order room service, or whatever you need. I'll stay here until he arrives." I sat on the living room sofa, and for the first time all day, I could really process what had happened. My own daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, had planned my death. The man I considered a son had calculated the value of my life in dollars. It was a betrayal so deep, so painful, that part of me still couldn't fully believe it. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of liberation. For years, maybe without realizing it, I had been living to please others, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect mother-in-law, the perfect grandmother. I had given everything of myself without asking for anything in return, believing that was love. Now I realized I had been living a lie. The room phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was the hotel reception. "Mrs. Danes, there's a couple down here asking for you. They say they are your daughter and son-in-law. Do you want us to send them up?" My heart immediately sped up. "No," I replied firmly. "I don't want to see them. Please tell them I'm not registered at this hotel." "Understood, Mrs. Danes. Is there anything else we can do for you?" "Yes. If that couple insists or causes trouble, call the police immediately." Sarah, who had heard the conversation, walked over to the window and looked down at the street. "I see them," she said. "They're standing in front of the hotel, talking heatedly. Emily looks very upset, and Daniel is on the phone. How did they find me so quickly?" "They probably called every hotel and clinic in the city. But don't worry, Mrs. Danes. They can't do anything. You are here of your own free will. You are a competent adult, and you have every right to be wherever you want." 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Ryan's familiar voice. "Antonia, I just arrived at the hotel. Are you okay?" "Yes, Ryan. I'm fine, but Emily and Daniel are downstairs looking for me." "I know. I saw them when I arrived. Don't worry." "They're leaving now. It seems the hotel staff made it very clear they couldn't bother you." 5 minutes later, Ryan knocked on the door of my suite. Seeing him, I felt enormous relief. Ryan was a man of about 50, tall, with perfectly combed gray hair, always dressed in impeccable suits, and with that calm but authoritative presence that marks the best lawyers. "Antonia," he said, hugging me with the warmth of a long-standing friendship, "I'm so glad to see you safe. When I got your call this morning, I couldn't believe what you were telling me." "Ryan, thank you for everything you've done today. You literally saved my life." "Don't thank me yet, Antonia. The day is just beginning. Now we have to make sure Emily and Daniel pay for what they were about to do." Ryan sat down across from me and took a folder full of documents from his briefcase. "I want you to know exactly what's happening and what our next steps are." "I'm listening." "First, This morning I filed a formal complaint with the DA's office for conspiracy to commit murder. I have the recording of our phone call as initial evidence. Second, I requested a full investigation of Emily and Daniel's finances to determine if they've been gradually stealing money from you over the years. That possibility hadn't occurred to me, but it made perfect sense. Do you think they've been stealing from me? It's very possible, Antonia. People who plan such an elaborate murder have probably been preparing for a long time. Third, I've already contacted St. Joseph's Hospital to investigate Nurse Mike. If he really accepted money to kill you, we'll have solid evidence. And the fake will they mentioned? That's an excellent question. Tomorrow, we'll go to my office together to review your real will and make sure it's completely protected. We're also going to create new security measures so no one can forge your legal documents. And Ryan continued explaining the legal details, but I was thinking about something more personal. Ryan, what's going to happen to my grandchildren? They're innocent in all this. I understand your concern, Antonia, and it's very noble of you to think of them after what their parents tried to do to you. Legally, we can structure things to protect the children's future without benefiting Emily and Daniel. How? We can create a special trust for your grandchildren managed by a neutral third party. The money would be available for their education, health, and necessary expenses, but Emily and Daniel would never be able to touch it. I liked the idea immediately. My grandchildren were not to blame for their parents' crimes, and they deserve to have a secure future. Is there anything else, Antonia? Ryan continued, with a more serious expression. Tonight, Emily and Daniel are going to realize their plans have completely failed. They're going to be desperate. And desperate people can do unpredictable things. That's why, starting tomorrow, you will have 24-hour personal security. Is that really necessary? Absolutely. We've ruined a plan that would have given them $2 million. We don't know how far they're willing to go to get that money back. At that moment, my room phone rang again. It was the reception. Mrs. Dinez, the couple who was here earlier, just returned. This time, they brought 2 small children. They're in the lobby, and they say the children want to see their grandmother. My grandchildren. Emily had brought my grandchildren to blackmail me emotionally. I felt like a dagger had been twisted in my heart. Using my grandchildren as emotional blackmail was a cruelty beyond anything I had imagined. Ryan, who had heard the conversation, looked at me with understanding, and at the same time, with professional concern. Antonia, this is exactly what we expected. They're going to use every emotional resource possible to manipulate you. What do you want to do? My hands trembled as I held the receiver. I could perfectly picture the scene in the lobby. My little Matthew and Sophia, 5 and 7 years old, confused and scared, wondering why they couldn't see their grandmother. Emily had probably told them I was sick, that I needed to see them urgently. Tell them they can come up, I finally told the receptionist. But only the children. The adults stay in the lobby. Antonia. Ryan intervened immediately. I don't think that's a good idea. They could be using the children to get to you. Ryan, those children are innocent. I can't refuse to see them without an explanation. But you're right about the adults. They are not coming up. I called the reception again. Please tell them the children can come up alone, but the adults must stay downstairs. If they don't agree to that condition, tell them to leave. 5 minutes later, and I heard soft knocks on the door. When I opened it, I found my 2 grandchildren standing in the hallway, holding hands, with those angelic little faces that always melted my heart. Matthew was wearing his favorite superhero t-shirt, and Sophia was wearing a pink dress I had given her for her last birthday. Grandma Antonia, Sophia shouted, running to hug me. Mommy said you were sick in the hospital, but then they said you were gone. We were worried. Matthew approached more shyly. Grandma, why didn't you go home today? Mommy and Daddy were very angry. They said bad words in the car. I hugged them both, feeling tears start to run down my cheeks. These were my treasures, the only innocent ones in this whole nightmare. They had no idea their parents had planned to murder their grandmother to steal her money. "My loves," I said, leading them to the sofa in the suite. "Grandma is fine. I just had to change some plans at the hospital. And now I'm staying in this hotel for a few days." "Why in a hotel?" Sophia asked with that typical childhood curiosity. "Why not at your house?" Ryan, who had been watching silently from a corner of the room, approached with a kind smile. "Hi, kids. I'm Ryan, your grandmother's lawyer. She's staying here because she has some important work to take care of." Matthew looked at him suspiciously. "Are you a good guy? Mommy says some lawyers are bad." "I'm one of the good ones," Ryan replied with a genuine smile. "My job is to protect your grandmother and make sure she's safe." For the next 20 minutes, I tried to act normal, playing with my grandchildren, listening to their stories about school, asking about their friends, but all the while, my mind was working furiously, trying to figure out how I was going to handle this situation in the long run. "Grandma," Sophia said suddenly, "why can't Mommy and Daddy come up? They're sad downstairs. Mommy was crying." That question broke my heart. How do you explain to a 7-year-old girl that her mother had planned to kill her grandmother? How do you protect her innocence while protecting yourself? Sometimes, adults have difficult conversations that children don't need to hear. I replied carefully. "Mommy and Daddy will understand. The important thing is that you know Grandma loves you very, very much, more than anything in the world." "Are you coming to our house on Sunday like always?" Matthew asked. My heart broke completely. Sundays at my house with my grandchildren had been the best part of my life for the last few years, but now I knew it had all been a lie, a theatrical performance to keep me trusting until it was time to execute their plans. "I don't know, sweetie. Things are going to be a little different for a while, but you will always be able to see your grandma. I promise you that." Ryan gave me a discreet signal, pointing to his watch. The children had been with me for half an hour, and Emily and Daniel were probably getting more and more impatient in the lobby. "My treasures," I said, "you have to go back to Mommy and Daddy now, but I want you to remember something very important. No matter what happens, your grandma loves you more than her own life." "Okay." I hugged them tightly, breathing in that sweet smell of little children, memorizing the feeling of their little arms around my neck. I didn't know when I would see them again, or under what circumstances. "I love you, Grandma," Sophia whispered in my ear. "I love you too, my princess. And you too, Matthew." After the children left, I stood by the window, watching as Emily, Daniel, and my grandchildren left the hotel and got into their car. From my perspective on the 10th floor, they looked like tiny figures, but I could see the tension in their movements, the aggressive way Daniel slammed the car door. "That was very brave of you." "Very," Ryan said, approaching the window. "I know how hard that must have been." "Ryan, I need to know something. Is it possible for me to have a relationship with my grandchildren without having contact with Emily and Daniel?" "Legally, it's complicated, but not impossible. As a grandmother, you have certain visitation rights, especially if you can prove you are important to the children's emotional well-being. But it's going to be a long, hard, legal battle." "I don't care how long or hard it is. Those children are the only pure thing I have left in this life. I'm not going to let their parents take them away from me, too." The room phone rang again. This time it was a different voice at the reception, more formal, more official. "Mrs. Dainese, this is the hotel's head of security. We have a problem. The couple who came looking for you has returned again, but this time they brought reporters and TV cameras. They're outside the hotel, claiming you've been kidnapped, and that they're worried about your well-being." Ryan and I exchanged alarmed glances. This was an escalation we hadn't anticipated. "Reporters?" I asked, in disbelief. "Yes, ma'am. There are 2 news vans parked outside, and the couple is giving interviews, saying you disappeared mysteriously from the hospital and they suspect someone is holding you against your will." Ryan took the phone immediately. "This is attorney Ryan Morales. I am Mrs. Daineas's legal representative. I want you to know that she is here completely of her own free will, in full possession of her mental faculties, and is under no circumstances being held against her will. I understand, Mr. Morales, but the reporters are asking for a direct statement from Mrs. Dainese to confirm she is okay. Ryan looked at me, questioning. It was my decision. Tell them that in 1 hour, Mrs. Dainese will give a press conference in the hotel lobby to clear up the whole situation. I replied, with a determination that surprised me. Ryan hung up the phone and looked at me with concern. Antonia, are you sure you want to do this? A press conference is very public, very final. Once you publicly accuse your daughter and son-in-law, there's no going back. Ryan, they were the ones who decided to make this public. They were the ones who brought reporters and cameras. If they want to play dirty, we can play dirty. But this time, I'm going to win. For the first time all day, I felt an inner strength I didn't know I had. I was no longer the scared victim who had escaped the hospital that morning. I was no longer the naive old woman who had trusted her family blindly. I was Antonia Dainese, a woman who had built a $2 million empire from scratch, and I was ready to fight. All right, Ryan said, opening his briefcase again. Then let's prepare a press conference they will never forget. But first, I need you to tell me every detail of the conversation you heard this morning, every word, every name, every number. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it completely. For the next 40 minutes, Ryan and I carefully prepared my statement. We went over every detail of the day's events. We organized the evidence we had, and we planned exactly what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. Remember, Antonia, Ryan told me, as we went down in the elevator to the lobby, stay calm, speak clearly, and tell only the truth. The truth is always your best defense. When the elevator doors opened, I could see the lobby was full of reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. In the front row were Emily and Daniel, with expressions of absolute shock and terror. They had finally realized their perfect victim wasn't so perfect after all. It was time to start my revenge. The hotel lobby had transformed into a media circus. There were at least a dozen reporters with microphones, 3 television cameras, and photographers constantly firing flashes. The hotel manager had improvised a small podium near the reception, and chairs were arranged in rows as if it were a presidential press conference. When the elevator appeared and they saw me walk out, the murmur of conversation stopped abruptly. All eyes turned to me, a 72-year-old woman, dressed simply in jeans and a white blouse, walking with a firm step toward the podium. Ryan was by my right side, radiating that professional confidence only the best lawyers possess. But the looks that hit me the hardest were from Emily and Daniel. My daughter was as pale as a sheet, her eyes wide, her hands visibly trembling. Daniel's jaw was tight, his expression one of barely controlled panic. It was in that moment I realized the power I held in my hands. They had come here expecting to control the narrative, expecting to present themselves as the worried family looking for their missing mother. They never imagined that I would take control of the situation. I stood behind the podium and adjusted the microphone. The sound echoed through the lobby, and the silence became absolute. For a few seconds, I just looked at the audience, letting the tension build. Good afternoon, I began, my voice clear and firm. My name is Antonia Dainese. I am 72 years old. I am in full possession of my mental faculties, and I am here of my own free will to clear up a very serious situation that has affected my life and my family. The cameras moved in. The reporters readied their recorders, and I could see Emily and Daniel exchange desperate glances. This morning, I continued, I was at St. Joseph's Hospital, awaiting scheduled heart surgery. 30 minutes before entering the operating room, I accidentally overheard a conversation between my daughter Emily and my son-in-law Daniel that changed my life forever. A murmur of anticipation swept through the audience. Reporters leaned forward. knowing they were about to hear something extraordinary. I heard them discussing, in detail, how they were going to benefit from my death during the surgery. They talked about a forged will, about a corrupt nurse who would be paid $5,000 to administer a lethal dose of morphine during my recovery, and about how they were going to divide my $2 million inheritance. The lobby exploded in exclamations of shock. The camera flashes intensified, and I saw several reporters speaking urgently into their phones, probably to their newsrooms. "That's a lie!" Daniel shouted from his seat, jumping up abruptly. "This woman is senile. She's making up crazy stories." "Sir," Ryan intervened immediately, stepping up to the microphone, "I suggest you remain silent. Everything you say can and will be used against you in the legal proceedings that are already underway." Emily also stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, how can you say those horrible things about us? We love you. We were desperately looking for you because we thought something bad had happened to you." My daughter's performance was so convincing that for a moment, even I doubted what I had heard. But then I remembered every poisonous word that had come from her mouth that morning, every macabre detail of their plan. "Emily," I said, looking her straight in the eye, "tell me the name of the nurse Daniel bribed with $5,000. She went completely silent. Her face turned even paler, and her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Tell me the name of the corrupt notary who was going to process the fake will." Absolute silence. "Tell me how much you calculated my downtown properties were worth." Daniel grabbed Emily's arm, trying to pull her out of the lobby. "We don't have to listen to these ridiculous accusations. Let's go, Emily." But the reporters immediately surrounded them, blocking their exit with microphones and cameras. "Is it true you plan to kill your mother-in-law?" shouted one reporter. "Can you confirm or deny the specific accusations she has made?" asked another. "Where are Mrs. Denace's grandchildren? Are you using them for emotional blackmail?" The questions rained down from all directions, and I could see Daniel and Emily crumbling under the pressure. They could no longer maintain their masks of a worried family. Pure panic had taken over their faces. I returned to the microphone to continue my statement. "I want everyone to know I am not acting out of revenge or resentment. I am acting to save my life. This morning, I literally escaped my own execution." "Mrs. Denace," a reporter shouted from the back. "Do you have physical evidence of these accusations?" Ryan stepped up to the microphone. "We have a recording of the phone call Mrs. Denace made to me from the hospital, where she relayed in real time what she had heard. We have medical documentation proving her surgery was not urgent and could have been postponed. And we have an ongoing investigation into the finances of the accused and the hospital staff mentioned." "Have they arrested the nurse Mike?" asked another reporter. "That information is part of the DA's active investigation," Ryan replied professionally. At that moment, Emily broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom, please, the children are watching us on TV. Think about your grandchildren." That mention of my grandchildren filled me with a cold, calculated fury. "Now you worry about the children, Emily, when you plan to leave them without a grandmother so you could buy a house in Miami." The accuracy of that detail hit her like a slap. She had specifically mentioned Miami during their morning conversation, a detail I could not have invented. "We didn't say anything about Miami," Daniel muttered, but his voice was so weak it was barely heard. "No," I replied, pulling a small notebook from my purse. "You also said that with $2 million, you could travel through Europe, buy designer clothes, eat at the best restaurants. Do you want me to continue reading my notes?" The color drained completely from their faces. They realized I hadn't just heard them. I had meticulously documented every detail of their conversation. "Mrs. Denace," a TV reporter asked, "what will happen now with your relationship with your daughter and son-in-law?" It was the question I had been waiting for. The opportunity to send my most important message. My relationship with these people is over. Forever. I declared, with a firmness that echoed through the lobby. When someone plans your murder for money, there is no possible forgiveness. There is no possible reconciliation. Trust, once broken in this way, can never be repaired. And your grandchildren. My grandchildren are innocent in all this. I will do everything legally in my power to maintain a relationship with them, protecting their financial future through trusts that their parents will never be able to touch. Emily let out a choked cry at that. The realization that they hadn't just lost the inheritance, but that I was actively cutting them out of any future benefit, hit her like a hammer. "You can't do that," she shouted. "We are your family." "My family would not have planned my death," I replied coldly. "My family would not have calculated the value of my life in dollars. My family would not have bribed nurses to poison me. You stopped being my family this morning, when you decided I was worth more dead than alive." The reporters were writing furiously. The cameras captured every gesture, every tear, every moment of this devastating confrontation. I knew this press conference would be national news, maybe international. The story of an elderly woman who uncovered her own family's murder plot and managed to escape was the kind of drama that captivated audiences. "One last thing," I added, moving closer to the microphone. "I want to send a message to all the elderly people listening to me. Do not trust blindly, not even in your own family. Protect your legal documents, maintain control over your finances, and always, always have an independent lawyer looking out for your interests." Ryan nodded in approval. My message of empowerment for other seniors would be perfect. "Will you take legal action?" a reporter shouted. "We are already taking it," Ryan replied. "We have filed criminal charges for conspiracy to commit murder, and we are investigating possible financial fraud that may have been happening for years." It was the final blow. It was the final. We weren't just accusing them of the murder plot. We had planted the seed that there might be more financial crimes in the past. Daniel finally managed to push his way through the reporters, dragging Emily toward the exit. But before he left, he turned and shouted at me with a voice full of venom. "This isn't over! You crazy old woman! We're going to take everything you have." Those words were captured by every camera and microphone present. It was public confirmation that his intentions toward me were anything but loving. He had sealed his own fate with that public threat. As they left the hotel, chased by reporters and cameras, I stood behind the podium, feeling a strange mix of triumph and deep sadness. I had won this battle, but I had lost my family forever. But at least I was alive to fight another day. The next 48 hours were a media whirlwind, unlike anything I had ever experienced. The press conference had gone viral on all social media platforms. The national news had made my story their top headline, and my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from journalists, TV producers, and even offers to write a book about my experience. Ryan had hired 2 professional bodyguards who took turns protecting me 24 hours a day. It wasn't paranoia. It was a necessary precaution after the public threat Daniel had made in front of the cameras. A man who plans his mother-in-law's murder for money is capable of anything when he sees his plans fall apart. "Antonia," Ryan told me during our breakfast in the hotel suite, "I have important news about the investigation." "I'm listening." "First, they arrested Mike, the nurse, when the investigators showed him the footage from the press conference and told him Daniel had already mentioned him by name. He broke down immediately. He confessed everything: the $5,000, the plan for the extra morphine, the conversations he had with Daniel over the last few weeks. I felt a mix of satisfaction and horror. On one hand, we had definitive confirmation that everything I heard was real. On the other, it was terrifying to know how close I had come to a meticulously planned death. "Second," Ryan continued, "we found evidence that Emily and Daniel have been stealing money from you for the last 3 years. Small amounts at first, but they gradually increased. In total, we calculate they took approximately $300,000. $300,000? I repeated, in disbelief. How is it possible I didn't notice? They were very clever. They used their access to your bank accounts to make transfers that looked like legitimate expenses. Property repairs that were never done, insurance policies that were never bought, fake investments. Daniel has accounting knowledge that allowed him to cover his tracks very well. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. Not only had they planned to kill me, but they had been systematically stealing from me for years. And the corrupt notary, that's where it gets interesting, Ryan said with a shrewd smile. We couldn't find any corrupt notary willing to forge your will. We think Daniel was lying, maybe to impress Emily or to sound more confident in the plan. He probably thought he would figure that detail out after your death. So the plan wasn't as well organized as I thought. Exactly. It was the plan of two amateurs, desperate for money, not professional criminals, which makes them more dangerous in some ways, but also easier to catch. At that moment, my personal phone rang. It was a number I recognized immediately. My brother Mark, who lived in another city, and with whom I had gradually lost touch over the last few years. Antonia. I heard his familiar voice, full of worry. I just saw the news. I can't believe what's happening. Are you okay? Mark, I replied, feeling a genuine emotion for the first time in days. It's so good to hear your voice. Yes, I'm okay. Scared, betrayed, but alive. Sister, I'm coming down there immediately. You shouldn't be going through this alone. I'm not alone, Mark. I have an excellent lawyer and security protection, but I would love to see you. I'm taking the next flight. I'll be there tonight. After hanging up, I realized something important. For years, I had been so focused on pleasing Emily and Daniel that I had neglected other family relationships. Mark was my younger brother, an honest, hard-working man who had never asked me for anything. Maybe it was time to reconnect with the people who truly loved me, unconditionally. Ryan interrupted my thoughts. Antonia, there's something else we need to discuss. Emily and Daniel have hired a lawyer, and they're preparing their defense. What kind of defense? They're going to claim you have senile dementia, that you invented the whole story, and that you're being manipulated by me to change your will in my favor. The audacity of that strategy left me speechless. How can they claim dementia when I have medical exams proving I'm perfectly lucid? They will argue the exams were done after I supposedly manipulated you, and therefore are not valid. They will also bring witnesses to say you've been confused lately. What witnesses? Probably neighbors, domestic employees, anyone they can convince or pay to say what they need. The realization that the battle was just beginning hit me like a cold wave. I had won the first round with the press conference, but they weren't going to give up easily. $300,000 already stolen, plus $2 million in potential inheritance, was worth fighting dirty for. What do we do? I asked. We document everything. We record all our conversations. We photograph all our meetings. We collect testimonies from people who can vouch for your mental lucidity. And most importantly, you must continue to live your life normally, proving day by day that you are in full control of your faculties. That afternoon, while Ryan worked on the legal documents, I sat by the window of my suite, looking at the city spread out before me. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. I no longer had to pretend to enjoy those tense family dinners. I no longer had to listen to Daniel's condescending advice about my finances. I no longer had to act like the perfect grandmother while they stole from me behind my back. My phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. Mrs. Dinez, a young female voice said. My name is Valeria. I'm an investigative journalist. I've been following your case, and I'd like to make you a proposal. What kind of proposal? We want to make a documentary about your story, not just about the attempted murder, but about the broader issue of financial elder abuse. Your case could help thousands of people in similar situations. The idea intrigued me immediately. If my horrible experience could serve to protect other seniors from being victimized by their own families, maybe all this pain would have been worth it. "I'm interested," I replied, "but I would have to talk to my lawyer first." "Of course. We also want to assure you that you would have full editorial control over how your story is presented. We don't want to exploit your tragedy. We want to empower you to help others." After hanging up, I thought about the extraordinary turn my life had taken. 3 days ago, I was a naive old woman who trusted her family blindly. Now, I was a survivor, a potential activist, a woman who had taken back control of her destiny. My brother Mark arrived that night, and for the first time in 72 hours, I could completely relax. Being with someone who loved me unconditionally, who had no hidden agenda, who simply wanted to make sure I was okay, reminded me what a real family felt like. "Antonia," he said, as we had dinner in the suite, "I always knew there was something strange about Daniel. Too charming, too interested in your business, but I never imagined he would go this far. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you seemed happy. And after Robert died, I was afraid you'd think I was just jealous of your new family." It was another painful but important lesson. Sometimes the people who truly love us stay quiet so they don't hurt us, while the ones who want to harm us never stop talking sweetly. That night, for the first time since the hospital, I slept deeply. Tomorrow, a new phase of my life would begin, and I was ready to face it. 6 months after that life-changing press conference, I'm sitting in my new office, reviewing the final documents from the trial. Ryan just called to confirm what we already knew was going to happen. Emily and Daniel were sentenced to 8 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud. Mike, the corrupt nurse, received 5 years for attempted murder. Justice had finally been served. The documentary Valeria produced about my story became a national phenomenon. Titled, "The Grandmother Who Saved Herself." It has been seen by over 5 million people and has inspired changes in elder protection laws in 3 states. I've received over 10,000 letters from people sharing their own stories of family abuse, and many have managed to protect themselves thanks to my example. My brother Mark moved to live near me, and we've rebuilt the family relationship I had lost for years. It turns out, when you surround yourself with people who truly love you, life becomes much richer and more meaningful. The most complicated part of all has been the situation with my grandchildren. After months of legal battles, I managed to obtain supervised visitation rights. I see them every other Saturday at a family center, under the supervision of a social worker. At first, it was painful and artificial, but gradually, we have begun to rebuild our relationship. Matthew, now 6, asked me last week why his parents were in the place where bad people go. I explained, in words he could understand, that sometimes people make wrong decisions that hurt others, and they have to learn to be better. "But you're still our grandma, right?" Sophia asked, with those little eyes that still melt my heart. "Forever and always," I replied. "No matter what happens, I will always be your grandmother who loves you more than anything in the world." I have established educational trusts for both children that will guarantee them the best possible education without their parents ever being able to touch a cent. When they turn 18, they will have access to enough funds for college and to start their adult lives independently. My health, ironically, has improved considerably since I escaped that death trap. The stress of living with constant lies was slowly killing me without me even realizing it. Now, surrounded by honesty and genuine love, my blood pressure has stabilized, and my heart has grown stronger. I still need the surgery, eventually, but it's no longer urgent. I've used my newfound platform to create the Antonia Dinais Foundation for Elder Protection. We work with lawyers, social workers, and authorities to identify and prevent financial and physical abuse of seniors by their own families. It's heartbreaking to discover how common this problem is, but it's also hopeful to see how many people we can help. Ryan is still my lawyer, and he has become one of my best friends. He helped me not only survive the crisis, but to transform it into a purpose. Antonia, he told me recently, you turned the greatest betrayal of your life into its most important triumph. At 73 years old, I've learned lessons I wish I had known sooner. Real family is not defined by blood, but by genuine love and loyalty. Forgiveness is not always possible or necessary when someone has tried to destroy you, and it is never, ever too late to take control of your own life and write a new chapter. Emily has sent me several letters from prison, begging me to forgive her, claiming it was all Daniel's idea, that she was a victim of manipulation. But I know the truth. I heard her voice that morning in the hospital. I heard the coldness with which she calculated my death. I heard the genuine excitement when she talked about spending my money in Miami. There is no forgiveness for that. There is no second chance for someone who plans your murder. Daniel, on the other hand, continues to maintain that I'm a crazy old woman who invented everything. Even from prison, he continues with his narrative of victimization, but the evidence was overwhelming. Mike's confession, the bank records of the theft, the recordings of our conversations, and the testimony of multiple witnesses about my mental lucidity. This morning, as I was reviewing the requests for help that come to my foundation, I found a letter that particularly caught my eye. It was from a 68-year-old woman in a situation very similar to mine, suspecting her son and daughter-in-law were planning something terrible to seize her inheritance. Mrs. Daynace, she wrote, your story saved my life. When I read about your experience, I realized the signs I was seeing in my own family were not my paranoia. I sought legal help, hired private investigators, and we discovered they had indeed forged several documents and were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. Letters like that remind me why it was worth exposing my most intimate pain to the world. At the end of the day, when I return to my new home, smaller but infinitely more peaceful than the last, I sit in my garden and reflect on the extraordinary journey my life has been. I lost a daughter and a son-in-law, but I gained a chosen family of people who truly value me. I lost my innocence about the unconditional goodness of family, but I gained wisdom and strength I never knew I had. And most importantly, I am alive, not just physically, but spiritually more alive than I have been in years. 30 minutes before my surgery, I heard the plan that was supposed to end my life, but those 30 minutes were not the end of my story. They were the beginning of my rebirth. To everyone who may be listening to this story, trust your instincts, protect your legal documents, maintain control over your finances, and remember, it is never too late to defend your right to live with dignity and respect. The truth always finds its way, and justice, although sometimes slow, always arrives. My name is Antonia. I'm 73 years old, and this is my story of survival.